Everything that's going down in the world of sports, Mad Dog Sports Radio has you covered. Now back to your host, Lance Medow.
Moving along here in hour number 4. So glad you could spend part of your weekend with us. We've hit on a lot of NBA and NFL topics, and we're going to stay on the NFL front as I now have a special guest on the line, former Panthers and Giants linebacker Jon Beason, who just announced his retirement after 9 seasons in the National Football League. Jon, Lance Medow here on Sirius XM Mad Dog Sports Radio. Appreciate the time. How's everything?
I'm doing well. How's everything with you?
Doing very well. Jon, you fought your way back from a number of different injuries during your career, and I know that you probably had the same plan in place after suffering that knee injury earlier this season. So with all that being said, how difficult was this decision to ultimately call it quits, and how big of a factor was your health?
Well, first off, you have to come to terms with it and realize that some things are out of your control. If there's something in my control that I can do, I'm going to give myself every opportunity to go out and get that done. But, you sit down with the docs, and when they decide to place you on IR and telling you why, and then the next conversation is, based on, being active, one, when you're done with football, or being able to, make it through an off-season training camp, 16 weeks, and then obviously the practices, just probably wouldn't be able to do it. And that was the thing that in October, you first get hit with it, and all this time has passed, and I've come to terms and try to do the best I can mentally, wrapping my mind around it.
Jon, in terms of obviously some of the thought process that you went through over the last few weeks and so forth, do you feel as if you have had the opportunity to go out on your own terms?
Yeah, I mean, injuries are unforeseen. You can't, factor them in. Everyone has to go through it to some extent, but, this will be my 11th surgery. 4 out of the last 5 years I've been placed on season-ending, with a season-ending injury, and now it's just a matter of saying, okay, well, from the doctor's standpoint, hey, you just can't come back from this. The cartilage is too bad, and that is something you have to be okay with, knowing that eventually, whether it's on your terms or not, that day was going to come.
When you look back at all of these injuries that you've mentioned, that you've overcome, and you fought back from a number of them, I mean, do you look back and say to yourself, is there anything I could have done differently to perhaps set a different trend or go down a different path with respect to all of these injuries?
Well, I would say that, part of it is the nature of how I played, how I trained. I wouldn't change that at all. I've gotten a lot smarter over the years and what to do and what not to do in terms of training or how to practice. But, intensity and playing at a high level consistently is always based on, your ability to sustain. You make a great play, that's good, but are you still making that great play in the fourth quarter? Guys slow down where, I would always pride myself on picking it up or on having that extra gear. And, because of that, my body definitely probably wore down faster. For 4 years, I didn't miss a snap. I didn't want to miss a snap. I didn't miss practice, nothing. You just keep rolling. But I gave myself every opportunity to be healthy within my own means, and I'm okay with that because I know that I played the game the way I wanted to play, and also there was nothing more I could have done.
Talking with former Panthers and Giants linebacker Jon Beason, who announced earlier this week that he was retiring after 9 seasons in the league. And, Jon, you just alluded to the fact that those first 4 seasons in the league, you played in all 16 games in each season. You made a few Pro Bowls. You were All-Pro. Then in the last 5, just 29 total games. How much do you think 2011 was a turning point for you when you suffered that Achilles tendon injury?
Yeah, so that was the year of the lockout. I always start right after the Super Bowl in terms of training, trying to be in the best possible shape I can, to start the offseason, whether it's mid-March before the CBA and then obviously mid-April after the CBA. And I would show up ready to roll, ready to play football in March and April. all of a sudden I was just kind of just training, and here's my Achilles injury. I had tendinitis. It was hurting more and more. I'm trying to push through it. I think the consistent or the continuous off season in terms of there not being a break where you go back up to your team and then now you're doing their workout as opposed to maybe doing 2 days at home. So it's kind of like those peaks and valleys as you go through the off season. You're going a little harder. You're taking it a little easier, and I think I had to end up working out in the pool just because I couldn't put any pressure on it. We get into training camp, and I'm not practicing. I signed a huge deal. The team was aware of the injury, and then it's week 1. We're getting ready to play Arizona, and I'm the guy. I'm like, well, we got to do what we got to do. We even tried a little procedure within training camp, to go in and put a screw in my heel to decompress the bone the same way you treat a stress fracture, and that didn't work. And the start of that second half, the first time I really, really had to open up and run full speed, it just popped on me, and it's kind of been a snowball effect since.
And then after that, they obviously moved you around to different linebacker positions with Carolina. And then early in the 2013 season, you get a different opportunity as you were traded to the Giants. And I remember that first game you played against the Chicago Bears. It must have been about 48 hours after you arrived with the Giants. And I mean, you led the team in tackles. You were all over the place, and you wound up playing all 12 games with the Giants in that 2013 season. Once that season ended, Jon, and you were on the field, you proved that durability wasn't maybe an issue anymore. Did you feel that was a turning point where maybe now you were back on the right track and the injury bug wouldn't get the better of you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm not sad about the setbacks. I think, in a great story, you always have to overcome something. There's always some turmoil that you have to, endure, and then you push through, and then you come out on the other side, and you're better because of it. The nature of the injury, microfracture, the knee at the time in Carolina. I was coming up on. Sorry, I have a cold. I was coming up on about 10 months out, and it's really one of the worst injuries you can have because it's not a proven science. Sometimes you have the microfracture and it doesn't work. It's 50-50, and teams kind of, when it comes to money, you have to move guys. They force you into a restructure, and we're getting ready for the bye weekend, and sure enough, they say like your knee just starts to feel better all of a sudden. Early in the season, the first couple games, like I wasn't practicing. I was falling down. My knee was giving out on me. I wasn't ready to play, but it was time to play. I'm on the roster and I'm doing the best I can. And then sure enough, it just started to feel really good during a bye week. And that week I was traded. So, I felt blessed at anything because if I got traded prior to that, I would have showed up and still been, somewhat damaged goods. But I was feeling good during that week of practice, and I was able to go out the first time in a long time that I felt healthy enough to play football. And, I ended up playing well throughout the next 11, 12 games. And, I signed a new deal, and it was my first off-season training in 3 years. 3 years. So it was a dream come true. I was back. I had proven that I could still play in the league. And, here's another injury, a toe injury, where I was absolutely rolling during OTAs.
Talking with former Panthers and Giants linebacker Jon Beason, who just announced his retirement. And you started your career with the Panthers. They made you their first-round pick in 2007. You had the best seasons of your career as we went over. And I know in the statement that the Giants released earlier this week, Jon, you mentioned one of the things that you wish you could have had an opportunity to do was help bring the Panthers their first-ever Super Bowl championship. And coincidentally, Carolina goes to the Super Bowl this year. I know you still are very friendly with a number of those players. How difficult was it to watch from afar to see teammates who obviously you support, but at the same time maybe wishing you were a part of what went on this season in Carolina?
Well, I know the feeling of trying to become relevant. And, it's an issue in our league with some of the smaller market teams versus, some of the more storied franchise teams in terms of, notoriety, primetime games, everything. It's just different. Having been on, in Carolina and then obviously playing for the Giants, which is the number one media market in all of football. And, to see them go out and have so much success over the last few seasons, it was extremely tough because, when you get drafted by a team, it's just a different connection. They basically made your dream come true of being an NFL player. And then when you play well there, you think you're going to retire there. I remember being a young player and watching John Casey, Moose Muhammad, Mike Minner get up there in our team room and, all the cameras in there and them, go out with class and retire. And I said, man, one day, no time soon, I want to do that. And I want to be the first to bring the Panthers a championship. And that's really what it's about. That's the thing that, it'll never sit well with me that, my time as an NFL player, I wasn't able to get a championship or, help my teammates get a championship. And, now that it's past me, I even went to the game knowing that I was going to retire, to support my former teammates and, basically taking the experience of what it's like, to go to a Super Bowl. So you don't go as a player because you want to play in one, but, once it's past you, what better Super Bowl than Super Bowl 50 where all my friends are still playing?
Well, and one of your former teammates and a big reason why Carolina got to the Super Bowl was Cam Newton, and you got a glimpse of him as a rookie, John, when you were with the Carolina Panthers. And I'm sure you're aware, as you see the media reports, he seems to be a very polarizing figure as of late. The media, the fans, everybody seems to have a different take on him. What were your initial impressions of Cam when he was a rookie, and why do you think he's such a polarizing figure?
Well, I think first off, he's done it better than anybody, completing the trifecta of winning, the Heisman, national championship, and then obviously going first overall. You can't do it any better. You can't script it any better in terms of success. And then you come in and, you are a freak. You are a specimen. The arm strength, the ability to run the football, the potential was through the roof. And the thing that I was most impressed with him was, his ability in college to continue to play well when things were against him, when people would talk bad about him, the things that he had to go through in college, it just proved that he had it in the moment. And it's, as a quarterback, it's all about what you do in the moment, or even as a player. You get into a big game, like a Super Bowl. You've seen him countless times this year just step up and make plays to get his team over the hump. And it was just impressive. Now to see how far he's come, obviously he didn't handle himself great after the Super Bowl, but most people don't. I think the world of him. I think the potential is through the roof. He just has to continue to evolve and come along.
Talking with former Panthers and Giants linebacker Jon Beason, who just announced his retirement earlier this week. And, John, you referenced the post-game presser that Cam had after the Super Bowl. And, from my time covering the Giants when you were there, the one thing that you were very well known for, the time you took to interact with the media, whether it be through good times, whether it be through bad times, when you were sidelined, when you were even in the heart of the defense as a captain. So you had that reputation of knowing how to interact with the media. Watching what Cam did and just seeing how other players interact with the media, I'm curious, do you feel there's a double standard across the NFL landscape where players are looked at or their expectations are put in different places, maybe based on the caliber of the player or what they do on the field? And is that fair, maybe?
Well, it's all fair because, at the end of the day, when a fan comes up to you and asks you for an autograph, you should feel honored by that. And I think players like that. And, I know that there's a time and place for it, but I don't like the players who, eventually feel like they're too big time for that. Because one day people will stop asking you for your autograph. One day you will not be such a big deal. And I think you look at, some of the bigger guys, some of the brand ambassadors of our league, you have to handle yourself well because you are that good. If you don't want people to interview you or, constantly be at you, fans, don't play well and it won't happen. It's a double-edged sword. It's the unwritten contract that you sign when you come in as an NFL player that you're going to conduct yourself a certain way. And whether it be good times or bad times, you have to lead. And for me, I understood that, and I always wanted to set an example and say that, the outward perception may be that, athletes this or famous people that are, a little big time in terms of how they treat people, but all people are the same. And for me, I never wanted to be labeled like that. So I try to take the time and even when things are bad, hold my head up, stick my chest up, and, realize that this is part of it, because I also want to do an interview when things are going well. So you just handle it.
John, before I let you go, what is next for Jon Beason in his post-NFL career?
I don't know. Hopefully, one day I'm sitting next to you.
Well, I hope you don't take my job. I'd be okay with you sitting next to me.
No, you know what? I just want to hang out. I don't want to take anybody's job. I just need a chair and a microphone, and I'll be happy. But yeah, I have some aspirations to get involved on the media side, in terms of broadcasting or commentary or an analyst, whatever. And that'll hopefully that's next for me. And hopefully it's fulfilling. And the thing that everyone's told me over the last few months who I've talked to about retirement is just take the same approach that you took with football into whatever you do, and you'll be successful. And that's my focus is developing another passion in my life, the way football was for me.
Well, speaking of passion, I know that was the last question, but I just have one quick follow-up. You were known as a defensive captain when you were with the Giants each of the last 2 seasons, and, players seem to rely on what you had to say, and you commanded respect. I'm curious, is coaching anything that you've considered, given, how you've interacted with players, and you've really been a student of the game throughout your career?
I love game planning. I love the X's and O's. I love breaking down film and trying to find, some type of weakness in the opponent. That stuff's fun to me. I think the coaches, they don't get enough credit. And I'm going to take the time, if I have it, to just, harp on how much these coaches work, the hours that they put in at the collegiate level, professionally, the time away from their family. It's just, it's unbelievable. What's expected of them, and they don't get enough praise. So I'm doing it now, and that's what makes their job extremely hard. I would love to just give back and coach, but the part of the 70, 80-hour weeks, the blow-up mattresses in their office, not seeing their family for the entire season, basically, just high and by, it's something that makes you kind of scratch your head. So if I could just coach, that's cool, but the hours are a little crazy. But you never know. Maybe one day I'll be okay with that, and I'll get involved on that side of it.
It's funny because I spoke to your former Giants teammate Justin Tuck earlier this week. He had the same exact reaction as he just announced retirement. He says, listen, I do not envy what a coach has to go through in terms of all those hours. So it's no surprise you guys shared the same helmet and the same uniform as well as the same locker room, given that answer. John, listen, I greatly appreciate the time. Best of luck in your post-NFL career, and look forward to interacting with you in the future.
Thanks. You have a good one.
You got it. Jon Beason, kind enough to give us a few minutes here on Sirius XM Mad Dog Sports Radio, just announcing his retirement, 9 seasons in the NFL.